Welcome to the Beauties podcast, where we talk about everything you need to know about women's sports. From the grassroots to the pros, we got it all. Today on the show, Chanel Keenan joins us to talk about her time with the Seattle Kraken and how to make sports for everyone. Here are your hosts, Addie and Cowie.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Beauties Sports Desk. You know, Cowie, I'm always talking about Courtney Vandersloot. And I'll tell you this much. We're gonna talk about an interview today, but did you see the WNBA action of the last second of Courtney Vandersloot?
I didn't.
And
Tell me.
And
about
before
it.
we
Tell
hit
me
record,
more.
before we hit record today, Cowie's like, you know how you're gonna start, and I'm like, oh, do I know how I'm gonna start? Unreal. And obviously selected to the All-Star game, the All-Star set. Courtney Vandersloot's in it.
You're
obsessed.
sad we're going to Edmonton. You're happy she's in the All-Star game in Chicago.
In Chicago. It's going to be star-studded.
That would have been lights out to be at that one.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
I always think when you start the show and you're like, yeah, I know what I'm starting with, that you're going to ask me some outrageous freaking question. And it never really is. It's just, Courtney Vandersloot.
Yeah.
You know I'm a big fan of hers.
Hey, remember last week how I started with Courtney Vandersloot? Same thing. But it is because I did think of starting the show with a question.
Oh, boy.
A burning question.
Okay. What is it?
That we have not yet resolved in our friendship. Oh, that got deep. That
In
got
our
deep.
friendship.
Yeah, it was a big thing.
What?
What do you think there's more in the world of?
We're not going back to that. We are not going.
I thought about it the other day. So what is the question, Cowie?
Is there more wheels or more doors in the world?
Oh, wow.
We got heated into that.
That's what I mean. And then we just had to let it fizzle into the universe because we're like, oh, baby.
Yeah, there are a few times. Addie and I talk all day, every day almost.
Yeah.
There's not many people in this world that I talk to more than I talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few times where we're getting to a point now where you'll actually even just say to me just by how I look, oh, this isn't sitting good.
Oh.
I'm like, nope, mostly not.
Ooh.
So we weren't that heated in Windows, though. That adds another level.
Oh, my God. Because your doors,
Have
right?
Windows.
Doors have windows.
And some one door might have 8 windows because they got the little, or does that count as, anyways,
We
don't need to
because what made me think about it is we were at a Niagara Falls.
Mm-hmm.
We were playing one of these games, and on the bottom of the roller coaster there was like a little replica roller coaster. There must have been 10,000 wheels on the bottom of this thing, just with all the different things that fit together or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, if that, then you think of the wheels on every single moving roller. There's no way there can be more doors than wheels.
But there's a lot of standing things with a lot of doors. It's like equal amount of standing things as there are moving things in the world.
And so I just want to bring this back to this whole conversation that we've had numerous times about competing.
Yeah, neither of us are taking the L here.
No,
not
a chance. No way, Jose.
We're not doing it.
I'm on a family vacation and I'm looking at the roller coaster thinking, this is my level up on Cowie.
Wrong.
Cowie's wrong. I should text her right now. Look at all the wheels.
No, yeah, we're not doing it.
Yeah, so I did think about starting the show that way, but then Courtney Vandersloot lays a solid 3 to win the game the other night, and I was like,
gotta start there. I didn't watch it. This whole NBA thing, man. If any of you are thinking about going back to school, my soul almost said don't, but I would never say that. But go back to school if you really, really want to, but also it's a lot of work and you have way less time to watch sports like you love to watch.
oh yeah, no.
So
Can't
I did
be
not watch her score.
Yeah.
The 3-pointer.
Yeah, no, I love watching sports way too much. And there's so much going on right now. Wimbledon's happening right now.
I know.
Bianca Andreescu makes it to second round for the first time ever in Wimbledon for her.
Serena makes her return.
Emma Raducanu out in straight sets. Yeah. It's been insane.
Did you see the media, a lot of these tennis players standing up for the old school dress code of all white? And the fact that if we're going to talk about being a woman and there are certain parts of and times of your life where wearing white sucks, and mandating that you wear white for an event just because it's an old tradition is maybe it's time for us to rethink some of our old traditions. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
I'll have to send it to you.
Too busy crying in the corner about Emma Raducanu. Girl! Get it together. Come on. Emma.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how that falls through. I gotta get up on that.
I will text it to you. Also, for those of you who are, this dawned on me because I just flipped open my phone. For those of you who are listening to us, in my background on my phone is our new podcast thumbnail.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys will take a notice of that. Previously it was our Beauties logo, and now we've changed it up. So it's a little Addie and I, which I think is a good little shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that it has the words on it that we stand by.
Yeah.
Break the silence, lead the conversation. It's so important. And the response of seeing this new thumbnail has been super exciting. And, you put it together and it's phenomenal and it looks great. So thank you so much for doing that. And, it's amazing to see the following with Beauties, how engaged they are with all of our content. And, there's a lot of exciting things coming up this year for Beauties. And it's because of everybody who watches and listens to the show. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think that really leads us, talking about the thumbnail really leads us into who we had the pleasure of getting to talk to today on the show. Chanel Keenan, who was breaking the silence and leading the conversation and is going to continue to do that in her next adventures wherever she lands. She was the inclusivity consultant for the Seattle Kraken and has been a voice that I'm sure lots of you have already heard out in the sports world. She's been on lots of podcasts. She's shared her story. We had the honor of having her on the show today with us, and it was a blast. And one of the things that I think is just the most fun part of this is as soon as we stop recording, we always say it's so good to meet new friends and continue to be connected. So I thought that was a really fun interview for us, and I think ties into kind of our own messaging too.
Yeah, and so much solid insight on the conversation of diversity, the conversation of representation, the conversations of all the things that we need to continue to have in sport. And, her conversations of actually witnessing it, experiencing it, and being a part of it made her want to be a part of this change even more. And excited to see where, the universe goes. It was a, one of a kind position that was made essentially for her with the Seattle Kraken. And even in her time there, she felt so validated and that she could get into a room and speak up. And we need more of that. And we need more people like Chanel coming out and saying, these are conversations that are happening behind the scenes, and it's all positive and heading in the right direction.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. So we will touch on the nitty-gritty of this once it hits your ears. So hopefully you guys enjoy our time with Chanel Keenan.
Chanel Keenan, we are so excited to welcome you to the Beauty Sports Desk. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. We're pumped to have you here, and we're talking about a question we want to ask you right off the bat just to get things going. If Boston were to play Seattle, who are we cheering for?
And it'd probably be sad that you're not the first person to ask me this, so it depends on where I am. So if I'm in Seattle, I'll go with Seattle. If I'm in Boston. It's going to be really hard for me to, root against them. And it's funny, the game that they did play here against the Kraken here in Boston, they lost, but they lost in overtime. So I kind of felt like, that was the universe being nice to me.
Yeah.
No kidding. I thought you were just going to answer I was going to cheer for hockey.
Yeah.
Because that might be
Oh,
a bit
heck
easier
no.
answer.
No, I'm going to be dead honest about it.
I love that.
Well, when you think of the history of a hockey organization such as Boston.
Ooh, yeah, that is it's like sewn into people's DNA to be a Bruins fan.
Yeah, I feel like everybody wears a hockey jersey to work in Boston.
Underneath their suit and tie.
Probably, yeah. Especially on a Friday, I think you could get away with that.
That's right.
I love that. So, and we're going to get into a lot about your position with the Seattle Kraken and, how that kind of came about and all these different things. But the one thing that I actually watched was how you were actually able to be a part of the Seattle Kraken draft day. Can you just explain that whole experience? I know you got to announce Morgan Geekie being a part of the organization. Can you kind of just explain the vibes of what it was like to be there? I just feel like it would be the coolest atmosphere.
It was definitely something I'm never going to forget. And I think, I wasn't going to go. I was trying to, conjure an excuse as to why I should go out there because it was a little bit of a strange time, still pandemic time, but it was, a sweet spot during it. So, people were just starting to feel comfortable going outside and doing things. It did feel very different than even right now. I feel like a surge is happening here a little bit. So, I don't know if I would travel if it was, the other way around this year. But it was strange. I kind of decided to go on a whim. I told a couple people in the office that I was going. And then I got an email from, I think, our corporate partnerships team. And they were like, a little birdie told me you're coming to the expansion draft. We had something we wanted to ask you, no pressure. I don't know if this is interesting to you, but we'd love to have you present with the Washington girls hockey team that we have. And, if that's comfortable for you, if you feel like that's good, we can do it. And I was like, it took me a minute to be like, I don't know if I want to do this because that's a lot of people and it's kind of history at the same time. I know that I have such a tiny part in this specific moment in time, but in hindsight, I'm like, wow, if they ever do some sort of wacky documentary about this process years from now, there's a chance this comes up. So it was really nerve-wracking and the way it was presented to me is you're gonna have, maybe a minute to say something. So I had a cue card with this whole little speech. If I wanted to use that one, but they were like, speak from your heart, whatever, if you don't want to memorize anything. And I was sadly a theater kid growing up, but that has since left my body, so I can't remember shit anymore. So I was like, you know what? I think it's gonna be a mix of both. So I took some of what they had said on the cue card, and then they asked me a question, and it's the second to last day of Pride Month. But I do remember one of the things that I referenced to in that little section of time was that just we want anybody who wants to play hockey or to be in the space to be welcome in it. And that's something that, we're still striving for. And I think that we should never stop striving for that, whether, because I was presenting with the Washington girls team at that point. So obviously we're talking about, in that context, girls, but I was really, truly anybody. I don't really care what you look like as long as you're not a terrible person, you belong in this space.
Yep.
And that's one of the issues I have with the slogan that we've claimed as, hockey's for everyone. I'm like, but I don't really want everybody here. If you're any of the ists, you can kind of stay home, pick a different sport. I don't know. But it was such a crazy process of how quickly everything came together. There was a dress rehearsal and everything. And my version of the dress rehearsal, it was just me. I showed up onto the scene basically, and they're like, we're just gonna do a quick run through, like here's where the camera's gonna be, here's where this is gonna be, all that kind of stuff. But it was just me, like the girls weren't even there yet, so it was kind of funny because I had like started to panic. Like I couldn't eat that whole day for whatever reason. I didn't know. I was kind of worried about like burping on camera for some reason. I was like, why do I feel like this is what's gonna happen to me this one time? But that I couldn't eat. It was crazy. So then after one of my coworkers had like a little rooftop like post game type of thing, and I like had a really crappy cheeseburger that was the best thing I ever had in my life because I hadn't eaten all day. So it was a whirlwind for sure. And again, like it's just totally something I'm never gonna forget.
Well, yeah, and I think two things that stick out for me. We're obviously in Manitoba. We're in Winnipeg, and I actually work with, or used to work with, Morgan Geeky's dad. So I love the connection that of that to us. And secondly, Addie and I talk about a lot with where we coach together and we coach young girls. My wife is a teacher and a coach, and she's had super impactful on young women. And I think we talk about that. One of the messages that we got in our most recent tournament is that for girls, they're 13 years old, and for a lot of them, we were the first female coach that they've had. And so I'm glad you had the courage. I'm sure you were nervous, trying to not burp on camera, but I'm super proud of you, and I'm super grateful for you for being representation on a stage like that for all sorts of different things. But I think that's a really big impact, and someday if there is a documentary, it's going to continue to leave a legacy in that way. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I was like, as soon as you said you were gonna come on, I was like, we have to talk to her about it because it was so cool.
I would love.
Absolutely. So there's, obviously we're talking a lot about hockey. You were involved with the NHL, the Seattle Kraken, as an intersectionality consultant. And so I know that this is a one-of-a-kind role. So could you explain to our listeners what that role entailed? Like what was your job with the Seattle Kraken?
Yeah, so both a beautiful and complex story of what I was doing during that time was the fact that like my boss at the time and myself sort of came up with what I wanted to do while I was there, because initially I was recruited just to help with the accessibility of our mobile app. And I was like, I'm super down to do that. The timeline of it was going to be like 8 months from her inquiry of asking me if I would do that. And, it was just such a strange feeling of like, I have this person in my DMs being like, this is, the newest team. Like, we're so cool. We're so progressive. We're trying to get things off right the first time. Like, this huge concept that could not be further from what I was used to being a fan of an original six team.
Yeah.
You can kind of read between the lines on that one, but there's just a bit of a culture shock. So, I was really nervous about doing what I did, but I ended up sending her probably one of the longest emails I've ever written, being like, thank you so much for considering me for this particular situation, but I feel like I can do more, and instead of, waiting impatiently for 8 months to hurry up, I'd love to help now. Like, I feel like I could be a really great, just addition to the voices in the room. Yeah. And at that time, I wasn't, like, they don't have a list of, like, here's everybody in our office and here's what they look like. And, so I didn't know for certain what the representation was like over there. So I really was just going to see, if there's, any opportunity for collaboration between me and them, and not necessarily, like, from a media perspective or anything of that nature, just more of, like, if we're gonna say, we're so different from every other team and start from scratch in this modern time, I'd love to be helpful for that. And so it had just, been created, all our diversity, equity, and inclusion, task force group, so to speak. And so I was able to sit in on a bunch of those different group meetings and sort of discuss what we ended up doing this past season. All the nights that you see, like Hockey Fights Cancer and our green night in particular, like anything of that nature, even like kids night, we had one of those. And so like anything of that nature, I was in on those conversations, like making sure that we were doing a open view approach to everything, just considering anything that was possible. And a lot of the situations very early on, like from the game presentation standpoint, was like, what are your dreams for accessibility in this particular part of the organization, or how we do something, like what would be ideal for you. And I'm the type that, like, even if someone's like, I want to take you on a shopping spree, like, pick whatever you want, I'm still like, I don't know if I want to get that, or if it's too expensive, or whatever, I'm still thinking, like, I want to be, rational and reasonable about what I ask for, because I think a lot of people would be like, ask for the biggest thing, and then, like, right below it is what you actually want, ask a little higher than, what you're trying to get, just so they'll meet you in the middle. Yeah. But I didn't have any clue as to what, I wanted to do and what they would allow me to do, for that matter. So, I made some suggestions about things, and I think, we're coming at an interesting time of, me ending my time there. But I do feel like I did what I wanted to do and what I was supposed to do while I was there. I don't have any regrets about, like, oh, I wish I had said this and, asked him to do that. Like, there's none of that for me, and I think that that's really nice, a nice feeling to have.
Totally.
Because I was a little bit worried about that happening to me. I think a lot of people are, in regards to, like, not saying what you want to say, and then you're staring at your ceiling at 3 a.m, and you're like, oh my God, I should have said that. But I have none of that, and I think that that's been the best part of this process.
That's an incredible feeling. That's one thing that Addie and I talk about on a regular basis. Is some people in this world would probably say I'm too blunt sometimes, but we just changed the thumbnail for this podcast, and that's the one thing that it says on that picture, right? Is break the silence and lead the conversation. And really, what we mean by that is exactly what you just said, is that you can close your eyes at night and feel comfortable and confident in that you did everything within your power to make change and to say the things that need to be heard in this world. So I know your last day with the Kraken was today. You had, you got to have an exit interview and make sure that the legacy that you've started continues. What's your vision now for Chanel? What if you were, and let's do that maybe where you said, people will throw it out into the world like, I want this and I'll settle for that. You've got to have a wish list. What's next on your wish list of things that you want to maybe pursue or help impact or try to achieve?
Yeah, it's honestly, I like, that question is always so hard for me, because a lot of the stuff that I've done in my life has truly been a result of, like, an accident, or like weird timing, or just the way things are in response to, like, world events and stuff like that. So I feel like that's a lot of my dreams have just been things that have, like, come across the table for me, and something that I wasn't even looking for. Like, I thought I wanted to get involved in sports, but I thought it'd be more like, fan development, or like comms, or something more super behind the scenes, because as a fan, like, in particular, like, I eat up, like, all the cool content that comes out, and I'm, like, one of those people that's like, oh, I really appreciate the thought process behind this, and more so than I care about the response. Like, if it's an interview with a player, I'm like, oh, these are really funny questions. Like, I wonder who came up with those. Like, that's where my head is. Like, I'm on the, like, creative mindset, and not so, like, I care about what the players are going to say in these situations. Because, they don't always say very much at all, so you kind of can't rely on that. Yep. But, like, I don't know. I think, I want to do so much, and I was talking to one of my mentors today, and he was like, you're doing things the hard way, so you have to remember that, and not, get freaked out by things taking what you would consider a long time to happen. And I'm one of those people that's like, I understand that, you know, a lot of the efforts and inclusion and diversity in hockey are going to take a really long time. And I'm like super like, you know, understanding of that and have a good perspective on it. But then I start to panic about my own like individual place in the sport and needing a career and needing stability in jobs and wanting, you know, work health insurance, like that type of vibe.
Yeah.
You know, nothing crazy, just some money in my pocket to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like at this point, I'm truly open to any opportunity because I do like learning in this environment. Like my brother's like trying to coax me into going back to school, and I'm like, unless somebody's gonna pay for it and it's not me, like I'm not going.
Yeah.
Like
I'm in the
like,
midst of the back to
I'm
school.
good.
Yeah, I'm in the
Right,
midst of
like
it,
it's
and
gonna
it's a
take
lot.
something traumatic for me to decide to go back to school. So I don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm honestly open to anything. Like someone, I was looking into something and they were like, "Well, this sort of lies in, you know, community relations. Like, are you okay with that?" And I was like, "Absolutely." Like a lot of the work that I did do was within community relations. Like that's one of the best things about my time with the Kraken is I truly got to see pretty much everything other than, you know, finances and numbers. And I'm
Yep.
completely okay with that because I'm terrible at math and you guys don't want me in any of that space. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's just, I'm always learning. I'm always down to learn new things and to experience things because that's how you find out what you don't want to do too.
That's very true.
Well, it's so interesting when you say things seem to be happening the hard way because we've talked about that a ton in the fact of it's almost like the universe is telling you, hey, maybe we should go down this path, right? And we do that. We feel that a lot here as well. But in that, in your time, because we want to get into with you a little bit in your, you know, your experience there of what you found was the most beneficial thing for including people with disabilities within sports. Because one of the things for us too is we're the same. We want sports to be for everybody.
Actually for everybody.
And actually for everybody. That's right. So it's like walking away from that experience, because you just mentioned like you got to see everything. What was the one thing you walked away with that's like, ooh, if we could really implement this would be a really big piece of the pie?
Oh my goodness. I think in some ways, like, so I had an experience with another team. I did a really short internship with them, and I just remember, like, this was in 2016. This was quite a while ago. And I remember being there and like looking around, and I saw like one person of color in that space, and they were a man, and they were in ticket sales. So, you know, they weren't necessarily in a position where you would even get to see them in a representative way as far as like, you know, being highlighted within that team. And, you know, there were some women there, but it was still just, it was all white women. And I just remember being like, okay, I'm not even sure I can survive here. Like, if I came here, I don't know if this would necessarily work out for me. Just feeling already so isolated, and I'm just there as an intern, you know, like it really wasn't anything serious. But, you know, representation is such a huge thing, and we don't realize its impact, you know, in the moment sometimes. Like, we're not, you know, even mentally present for that type of thing. Or even for you guys, like talking about being, you know, some of your girls as first female coaches, like that makes such a difference in the long run for some kids. Like, that matters to them. And I think one of the things that I started to feel like was, you know, as much as an impact as I'm making here in Boston, you know, 2,000 miles away, I think having to be physically present for some things, I was able to make more of an impact because there's a stuff you can't really ignore when, you know, you're physically faced with, you know, someone actually being there to, you know, call you out and to, you know, have uncomfortable conversations with. And so what I kind of learned was like, you know, if I ever do this for another team, you know, I'd have to really consider, moving there or whatever, or just finding a way to be physically present because, like I said, like there are just some things that you do not even think about unless you're faced with a situation. And even if I can't physically do that, one of the things that I discussed with someone over there was like, we should have, like we have a sledge hockey group that practices and plays every weekend, and I was like, it would be really nice if we could get their opinion. So like maybe we do like a weekend walkthrough with them, like from outside to inside to locker rooms to the ice, like like a full-fledged like beginning to end experience. So that way, like if they have any problems or things that they've worked out or whatever. Because I said to them, I was like, if you have any kids with any type of disability of some kind and they come across a small issue, they will figure it out. Like we are just resourceful. It's gonna happen.
Yep.
We make it work. Like if there's something going on that we don't know about that we can help with, it'd be nice to know about it. To help them out if we can make anything easier. So, suggesting things like that, suggesting arena walkthroughs, suggesting facilities walkthroughs or whatever, just to sort of point out any problems that an average person just would not like naturally come across.
Yeah.
I think is one of the things that I would suggest to truly any organization.
Yeah, that's an interesting, because I think you obviously you have this level of experience now at the NHL level, and one of the things that we talk about on a regular basis is how do we make that level of impact on the up and coming minds, right? And I think we're starting to see a lot of change in schools and in terms of accessibility and inclusion and all of those things, and I think that's just such a positive piece. I have a 7-year-old niece. Addie has a little 3-year-old, and they're gonna grow up in what I hope to be an entirely different world. But I think your message is so much more far-reaching than that. You think of like kid sport organizations and things that exist, and taking that inclusion message and representation message far beyond the professional league, so that our kids grow up in it, and when they get there, they ask for it.
Yeah, totally. And like even the thought, like it reminds me of a story of my sister-in-law Marissa when she's now the rec coordinator, and there was a kid in hockey that needed a sled and she didn't even think twice about it. She's like, well, we got to get one. Mm-hmm. That uncompromising of this is the way that it is. Everybody deserves a place in sports, and we will continue to push this way no matter what, right? Just stepping up and saying it's a non-negotiable, I think, is so important.
Totally.
So this has been an amazing conversation, and I know it's a conversation that we have to have more. And we just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for having those conversations and stepping up and being a voice, because it is so needed. So how do we help be a part of this mission? Where can people find you? How do we become part of your crew?
Well, if you thought I was chronically online before I was unemployed, it's gonna be even worse now. So you can find me anywhere at Chanel 37. I'm looking for a job. That's the next step. I'm looking for a job, and I felt as though if I was given or there was an opportunity to step outside of hockey, that I'd have a really hard time doing it, because I feel like this particular branch of professional sports is really hard to break into. Like I, truly felt like if I went anywhere else, that I'd have a really hard time getting back in, and that maybe culture and things are different, and they're all flawed in very special ways. So I'm not saying that like it would be a cakewalk anywhere else, but I'm again, like I said to you guys, I'm open to anything, and I think it doesn't make sense to just work for one team. I kind of always thought that like that's great that I did something with the Kraken, but I can't change the culture of the sport for just one team in a sort of progressive area of my country. So truly anywhere is going to be something of an adventure for me. Ironically, I am meeting somebody from the Jets in a couple of weeks, so maybe
Hey.
maybe I'll be able to say hi to you guys at some point in person. I don't know.
Absolutely.
You guys are a little too cold for me,
Yeah.
but we'll figure it out.
Hey, we've got warm outfits for you, and we'll keep you indoors if it's that cold. No, I think I love that message that you're gonna end off with too. Is that because it's the same end goal that we have, which is why I was so excited that you were here, Addie and I both. Is that it is a broad message that we can share, and I think part of this for us, and hopefully for you as well, is what we've said to every guest we've had is that this is a community too. And so if there's things that and places that we see and ways that we can continue to stay connected and involved with each other, even just becoming friends and creating that community of women who are pushing to make those kind of changes in sports, hockey, or whatever that looks like, we're excited to continue to do that with you. So if you get to Winnipeg, you know how to find us because we're hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, some of the last few podcasts I've done, and I mean this when I say this to you, like I met my best friend Kat through her podcast, and I said to her that day, I'm like, I'm sorry, but you're stuck with me now. Like, I don't know how else to explain this, but like once this has happened, we're friends now. I don't know how else. You can't escape me. So I'm super grateful for both of you for allowing me to come on, and it really. It was a very emotional day yesterday. When I got your message, I was like, "Oh, this is such a great, new beginning to sort of, start into the universe." So I'm super lucky that I got to come on and meet you both.
Well, we appreciate you, my friend.
Very much so. Thank you so much for your time, and we're definitely going for drinks if you come to Peg City.
Yeah.
Right on. Thanks again.
It's cool when you get to talk to somebody that's so open about, some of the challenges that you've gone through. And, when you get into organizations like that, I just like the way that she spoke so candid about her time and how she, enjoyed it and hopes to work with other organizations and continue this process.
Yeah, she is a woman who, and she's got a lot, we talk about it. Just being a woman in a lot of industries that we've spent time in is a challenge enough. Never mind being a woman of color, never mind being a woman with a disability. And she is so graceful in the way that she carries herself through the world rather, but also, yeah, in the fact that she's on a mission. And she said it as, when we were on the podcast there, that she's open to going almost anywhere that this takes her. She talks a lot about the universe has kind of crumbled in the right ways for her. And so I think that it's going to be really fun to watch where she ends up next. There's a lot of messaging that I'm going to take away from that too, just in conversations in our own household or within our own families, of making sure that we have representation and are inclusive in like every little detail of our lives, right? So that these bigger conversations, I think, then become easier if we do it on our own.
Well, and making it more, I don't want to say mainstream, but making it more of a conversation when the kids are young.
Yeah.
Making it more of a conversation when you are young of, sports is for everybody.
Totally.
There's just some kids that have to go about it a little bit of a different way, but that does not mean that they don't get to participate in sports.
Yeah.
And we as adults need to make sure that we never compromise that. As soon as we see something and we're in a position where you're a coach or a parent or anything, it's a non-negotiable. Let's just figure it out. Let's solve the problem so everybody can be involved in sports and love it their whole life.
Yeah, and you think about, I hope that she has, made an impact in Seattle and will continue to make an impact as she develops her career in a way that we think about business having like a marketing manager and a social media manager and all of these just like name stay kind of positions that we assume exist.
Right.
This position should be a thing everywhere. And I'm not only talking professional sports. I'm talking that really should be in grassroots organizations, whether that's at a provincial or a state level, whether that's in schools. I think schools do a better job probably than most of our just natural sports organizations do right now. But that's a job that she should and with the experience she has, maybe can lead up in a way of what should that or what can that look like within your organization. Who knows?
Yeah, no, we are, and we said this to Chanel too. We just appreciated her for everything that she's doing, talking, coming on the show with us, and I think there's a big avenue for her.
No,
and
I agree.
I think she's gonna go.
This is just the beginning. So we will continue to stay in touch with Chanel. If she ever makes it to Winnipeg, we're gonna hang out. Or if we get down to Boston, we'll definitely connect. But we'll continue to stay connected through our phones for now. But yeah, no, world's her oyster.
I love how in the beginning she just had the token answer because clearly every human being asked her about the Boston, Seattle.
Yeah. She's like, hate to break it to you, you're not the only one who asked.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
What? Are you kidding? I was working on this all day.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
I also love, you can tell that she's just been connected with a lot of different people too, because the first question I said is, can you hear us? And what was her response? Hell yeah.
Let's go.
Like, hammer down. We wouldn't have got that answer at podcast number 5.
No
so
chance.
33.
That's right. So I think that this is a conversation this is a really good starting point. We had an incredible human being on talking about it at such a high level. And I believe that this is going to be a continued conversation in the beauty sports world for a really, really long time, because we truly believe that sports is for everybody.
Yeah. Could not agree more with that, buddy.
And our soul. So we're so bad at doing this every single week. But thank you, everybody, for engaging with us on social media. And Cowie, where can everybody find us?
Yeah, so you can connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at Beauty Sports Talk, on Twitter at _Beauty Sports. You can find our voicemail at speakpipe.com/beautysports, or our website, beautysports.com, or connect with Addie and I, Addie Miles Abbott and Cowie14 on Instagram.
She's got it down pat that I don't even try. So I'm like, we always, that's right. It's just in there and we just let it roll. So today was fun. Please connect with us in any way. It definitely goes a long way. Rate and review the podcast. It goes a long way for us. And we truly appreciate anybody that does that. So with that being said, Cowie, final word.
Final words this week is a challenge to everybody listening, and the fact that what we just heard today is another challenge for ourselves to remember that representation matters, inclusivity matters, saying things when they need to be said, not being silent, not being complacent matters. That's what we try to do here every week on this show. So Addie, my friend, it has been a pleasure. I can't wait to do it again with you next week.
Thank you. Thank you all, and we will see you next week.